Hey, welcome everybody. I'm sorry I haven't posted in a couple weeks. It's been a little longer than I thought it would be, which I know is terrible for a new channel, but we're making a 7-Up cake today, and I didn't really have a recipe for it that was ready, so I ended up making 10 cakes, eating 5, and I went up 1 t-shirt size, so somebody better bake this cake. Anyway, we are making 7-Up cake today, and it's just a nice, bright, very subtly citrusy summer cake. And if you haven't baked that much, we're going to use a couple of skills that are used a lot in baking and are good to know. Folding gets a bad rap, I think because of a certain TV show.
I don't know how to fold.
It's easy. This is all you're gonna need. Very basic. We keep it basic here. And welcome to the Basic Baker. Let's go. So what is 7-Up cake? It's a pound cake that you make with 7-Up. So it has that really nice citrusy taste, but it's still a nice solid pound cake, and it is a great summer dessert. I had it when I was a kid. Whenever my family would visit my elderly uncle in Atlantic City, his neighbor would always bring over this 7-Up pound cake, and I loved it. And at the time, I just thought it was some random cake that only she made. But when I was researching for this episode, I discovered that it's a traditional Southern cake. So if you're from the South and I'm screwing this up, please be gentle. But I think it tastes good, so that's all that matters, really. Now, the first thing we're gonna do, the first thing you always do when you're baking, is start preheating your oven. And we're actually going to preheat to 325. Whoops. And we preheat at the beginning because it very often takes longer to preheat than the oven actually says. Your oven's really only to temperature when it's about 10 or 15 minutes after the beeper goes or the light turns off. So anyway, I forgot to take the butter and the sugar out. They're supposed to be the butter and the eggs, rather. They're supposed to be at room temperature, but I was rushing all over the place trying to get the video set up, and I completely forgot about the butter and eggs. But here's a great tip. Now, with the eggs, to get them to room temperature, it takes only about 5 minutes, and you just put them in a bowl of very warm, not too hot, but very warm. Ooh, there we go. Very warm water, and they'll come to room temperature in no time. Now, with the butter, you hear all sorts of weird methods, like do something in the microwave and, I don't know, or grate the butter, which is a mess. I tried it once. Really, all you need to do is put the laws of thermodynamics to work for you and just expose as much surface area as possible on a surface that conducts that conducts heat very well, like a plate. So I just, this is pretty warm already. It's so hot here, but yeah, if you just want to bring this to room temperature, arrange this on a plate. The plate will conduct that heat, or the cold. Will conduct. This is why I didn't get good grades in physics. It'll conduct the heat to the butter, and before you know it, that'll be at room temperature too. Now, why does it have to be at room temperature? Because when you cream butter and sugar, you are mixing it together, and it's really hard to mix butter when it's cold and hard. So that's why we do this. Now, the next thing we do after preheating the oven and taking care of the butter and eggs, if you've forgotten about those at first, is greasing and flouring the pan. Sometimes you don't flour the pan, but for something like this, because it's going to be really kind of a dense, moist pound cake, I put in that extra step of flouring it just so it's easy to get out of the pan. So first, I'm just going to grab a little bit of butter. And I'll put it on here. That makes it nice and easy. You could use the cooking spray if you want, and I've used it before. But you know, this is a really buttery pound cake, and why not use some butter? Now, we are using cake flour today. Don't be intimidated. It's just a flour that has less gluten than regular flour, so that your cake will be more tender. You can use all-purpose flour if you want, and I tried that at first, but it's just kind of tough. So, but you'll take some flour, a nice spoonful, and just shake it all around like the hokey pokey, and until you know the flour has coated every surface. And if you need to pound it, do it on some sort of soft surface. And okay, all right, and now we're going to save this flour that came out. It's a great use for parchment paper. So while we're waiting for our oven to heat and our butter and eggs to come to room temperature, let's start measuring out our dry ingredients. So let's start with the sugar and the flour. So sugar, easy. Just scoop in and take out. Now, oh, where's my cup? Where's my cup? There's my cup. So in case your cup measure doesn't quite fit in the bag, use a half cup. We're going to use 2 cups of sugar today. And yep, that's a lot. Okay, there's 1. And now we're going to do the flour. By the way, you can get cake flour in the baking aisle of your grocery store. It's just probably not going to be with the bags of flour. It comes in boxes. And this is in no way a commercial endorsement, but you know, there's only a couple brands out there. So if you've seen my first episode where I talked about measuring dry ingredients, specifically flour, you know that we're just going to take this fork, aerate it until it's nice and fluffy. You know, I'm just doing it in the box because that's probably what you've got at home. I do have this stuff in containers, especially cake flour, because it is a little messy, but we're keeping it basic, so we're going to do it out of the box. Okay, and just level off. Aerate again. So always fluff, spoon, and level. Two cups of flour, by the way. Okay, now I'm going to put in a 1.25 teaspoons of baking powder, and that helps the cake rise. A lot of recipes just let the bubbles in the 7-Up help it rise, but I found it still doesn't help it rise enough, so I put in a little baking powder. Southerners, please don't hate me. And, oh, there we go. So we're gonna do 1.25 teaspoons. Believe me, it took me a lot of cakes to figure out that 1.25 teaspoons was the right one. Okay, here we go. I'm gonna put that right in the flour. I'm using a half teaspoon of salt because I'm using unsalted butter. I have seen some recipes call for salted butter, but I like to use unsalted because the amount of salt in salted butter can vary from brand to brand, so this way you can control how it tastes. So now that we have our dry ingredients in here, take the fork that you used for your flour and just mix it around. Just to get everything uniform. So there we go. All right, our next ingredient is going to be some lemon zest. It doesn't end up with much, but it packs so much flavor. And I use this microplane grater. I talked about that in my first episode about tools, about how it was not only nice to have, but you end up using it more than you think. And it's not expensive, but if you don't want to bother and you just have your box grater, you can use the smallest holes to grate. But I'm going to use my microplane. Move the grater, not the fruit, and be gentle because you don't want to get the white part, the pith, because it tastes really bitter. You just want that beautiful zest. So, okay, well, we've been putting that together. Let's check out our butter and our eggs. Okay, our eggs feel nice, room temperature. And let's see about our butter. So, you know it's room temperature when you can, room temperature-ish, when you can put your finger in there and it leaves an impression. I probably should have left some slightly thinner slices, but you know what? It's fine. It's not hard, and it'll blend up just fine. We need one more ingredient. And that is just a tablespoon of milk. I use just a little bit. I've seen some recipes use a lot, maybe sometimes even whipping cream, but it just helps tenderize the cake a little bit. So if you don't know what it means to cream butter and sugar, or you've never done it, so all it means is that you're taking your butter and your sugar and blending them up so that they're light and fluffy and help make your cake a little light and fluffy. You don't want it to be a brick, so the sugar breaks up the butter, those oils, and you do just end up with a nice fluffy mixture, and that's what you want. So it takes about 5 minutes. If you have a stand mixer, it takes a little less time, but we're keeping it basic. We're just using the hand mixer, and it's fine. So let's put our butter in here. Okay. And I don't put the sugar in immediately. Some people do. It's fine. World's not going to end. But I like to give the butter a little bit of a head start, especially right now because it's not quite as room temperature as I want it to be. Start off slow at first. You don't want to make a mess. And then just slowly increase your speed. There we go. You want to scrape down the sides of your bowl occasionally with a nice silicone spatula. Make sure everybody gets to the party. Okay, now we're going to put in the sugar, just a little bit at a time, maybe half at a time, because this is a lot of sugar. And start off slow unless you want to blow sugar all over your kitchen. You see we're starting to get there. This is going to take a little longer than it usually has because I didn't get the butter quite to room temperature, so now the baking gods are punishing me, but thank goodness for editing so you don't have to sit through the whole thing. Okay, we're almost there. I want to put in the lemon zest too, just so it can get a little abrasive with the sugar and release a little more of the oils. And okay, see, look at that. It's beautiful. So I just go by if it starts to leave little trails when you're mixing. Then I'm going to just put in the milk. Now we put in the eggs one at a time. And I always use another bowl to break each egg, just because in case a shell gets in there, I can get it out easily here and not mix it up in the cake. So, there we go. and you incorporate each egg one at a time. Okay, now we're going to sift in the flour and fold it. It's not a big deal. If you have a sieve, well, that's what you need to sift it, unless you have one of those little, little cup things that you squeeze, but I just use a sieve. Now, why sift it? Because this is going to be a really thick, dense cake, and we just want to make sure that we give it every advantage possible. We don't want to have any clumps of flour, so we'll start sifting in about 1 cup at a time. Oop. And, all you do is this. See, now we're going to fold that in. Folding is not a big deal. All you do is draw it across, turn your bowl at the same time, and then fold the mixture over itself. Now, why folding? Again, it keeps things light. It doesn't, mix things up and make it denser. It keeps things as light as possible. If you ever make anything with egg whites, for example, you're gonna fold those in just so that they don't deflate. So we're just gonna give this every advantage possible and not mix it up too terribly much, just enough. And there we go, just down the middle, turn, fold, down the middle, turn, fold, down the middle, turn, fold. You get the idea. If you really want to, just mix it up. Not every recipe says to fold it. In fact, very few do, but I'm folding it. So, but you do what's more comfortable for you. And if you want to mix it now and try folding it some other time, by all means. And usually, actually, by the end, I just mix it up just a little bit and get that last bit of flour from the sides. This is why a silicone spatula is so useful. So the last ingredient is a 7-Up, and you definitely have to fold this because you do not want to deflate those bubbles. We're using a 1/2 cup of 7-Up, and I'm just opening it at the last minute. It's going to be our last ingredient. Okay. Now, just pour out. I'm going to try and avoid as many bubbles bursting as I can. There's about 1/2 cup. Now, I'm going to pour it in all at once. Gently, I'm going to fold gently. It's just going to be wet. So that's how it's going to be. But fold. There we go. Down the middle, turn, fold. Down the middle, turn, fold. Be gentle. Okay. Oh, that's good. Yeah, if you just want to stop at this stage and eat the batter, no judgment. But now we put it, I guess this is good for the camera. We put it in our prepared loaf pan. That's again why the silicone spatula is great. You can get every bit of that batter out there. Yep. And I'm not going to bash my spatula on the side of this too, because I don't want to burst any of those bubbles. So get that in there, level that out. Okay, look at that. Beautiful. All right. Now, in the oven, in the middle rack. We're baking this at 325 degrees for about 90 minutes. It takes Yeah, it's a long one, but it's dense. So, and it also depends on your oven. So, I would start checking around 80 minutes and start, go on from there. And once we get close, I'll show you how to check for doneness. Okay, this has actually been in the oven for 60 minutes. And just because this cake takes so long to bake, I usually put some tin foil over the top just to keep it from burning. So now I'm going to keep it in there for another 30 minutes. It's been 85 minutes and let's just check. I'm going to use a skewer. I want it to come out completely clean. Oh, it is completely clean. Look at that. I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting I needed a few more minutes. So, but let me just check again. I'm going to go all the way down to the bottom from the middle. Okay, yeah, so that could use about 5 more minutes. Okay, we got our cake. It's been cooling for about 10 minutes, and hopefully you can see how it's kind of pulling away from the sides just a little bit. So, where's my knife? There's my knife. All right, now we're going to gently run the knife around the sides. Because it's buttered and floured, it should come out very easily, but just to be sure, yeah, this is really sliding. Now, the moment of truth. Let me do this. Okay. Okay, you can see that pulling away, right? There we go. Oop. Okay, there we go. Oh, perfect. There we go. All right. Now, we will wait for this to cool for several hours, and then we'll put on the glaze. Okay, while we're waiting for the cake to cool, let's put together our glaze. Okay, first I'm going to need 2 cups of powdered sugar, and unlike flour, you can be pretty rough with this stuff. I'm not going to measure it out carefully. Okay. Can't do that with flour. Now for this glaze, in addition to the powdered sugar, oh wow, we're also going to be putting in a couple of tablespoons of melted butter and 1 or more tablespoons of milk. This is a cute little measuring cup, measures in ounces and tablespoons. Wow, did you like that story? And some vanilla. So, and remember, when you're measuring butter, you don't have to measure anything. It's all on the stick. It's all measured out in tablespoons for you. So, we'll put that in there. Take our other silicone spatula. It's always great to have 2. And I'm gonna start out with some of this. And a half teaspoon of vanilla. Okay, so that's going to be a nice counterpoint to the lemon. And with the milk and the butter, it's going to be nice. It's going to be a nice. It's going to be nice. Okay, so now we're going to take our whisk and start whisking it together. And I want to have a really thick glaze. I don't want to have something that's going to drip all over the place. I want it to be able to stay in place. Well, let's get rid of that. Okay, so, all right, obviously you need a little more liquid. So I'm going to put that in. Now, if I put in too much liquid, I just put in more powdered sugar. Okay. Let me just put in a little more powdered sugar. Ugh. That's kind of sweet. All right, just thicken that up a little bit. I guess I could have used cornstarch too, but too late now. Okay, that's great. And there's our cake. It's beautiful, nice and cool. You can't glaze this when it's even a little warm. You gotta wait till it's completely cool. Got a weird little thing here, but when you make it, it's gonna look better. Let's see. I'm gonna Lion King this. Anyway, so now I'll put on the glaze. Oof, all right. And also, even if you have a little divot like this in here, glaze hides all sins. Okay, so, all right, perfect. All right, now we wait a few minutes to let it set up, and we'll be good to go.
Now ain't she sweet, see her coming down the street. I ask you confidentially, ain't she sweet?
Okay, now to eat it. I'm not gonna eat this end. Well, not till later. Not till I get desperate. Okay, all right, let's get a nice, decent sized piece. Okay, there we go. Oh, look at that. Okay. Oop. Okay. Yeah, the glaze plays second fiddle to the cake, just as it should be. The cake has this. I'm gonna take a little bit from the middle. I mean, I love the crust though. The crust is nice and crunchy and caramelized, but let's see the cake. Yeah. Yeah, it's just like it's advertised. You know, it's mild, subtle lemon lime flavor. It's not your traditional pound cake. It's very light and citrusy and summery, and might as well give it a shot while it's still hot. Anyway, I hope you've liked this episode of The Basic Baker, and I hope you come back for the next one. Cheers.